In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer.
Amen.
I'd like to begin by sharing with you two different kinds of experiences I've had in my life, and perhaps you may resonate with them as well. One is the experience of guilt. For instance, I can remember when I was a senior in high school, I broke a rule. Our school architecture made the place look like a medieval castle, complete with a tower. But it was forbidden to climb the tower. It was too dangerous. However, I had always wanted to, so about a month before graduation, I figured they couldn't kick me out at that point. When a friend offered to guide me to the top, I readily agreed. It involved sneaking into the attic, climbing the elevator shaft, hoping that no one would use the elevator, and finally battling pigeons to climb a rickety ladder up to the battlements. We had a spectacular view and an exciting adventure. At the same time, I had done something forbidden and later lied to my house mother as to my true whereabouts. I never admitted to the school administration about this experience. Hopefully they're not listening to this recording. I got away with it. Was never caught, but inwardly felt very guilty about the lie. The second experience I sometimes have is that of shame. For instance, every time guests visit my home, I go into a frenzy of cleaning. I want the house to look perfect. I want to clean in all the corners, tidy up all the papers and boxes, plant flowers out in the garden, and so on. Now, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with an untidy house, nothing to feel guilty about. But I fear I will be judged by others and found wanting. This is shame. Guilt is an internally based feeling we get when we do something wrong. Shame is an externally based feeling we get when other people think we've done something wrong. So with guilt, the judgment comes from us. With shame, the judgment comes from others or our perceptions of what others think. We in the West live in a primarily guilt-based culture, while in the East, it is a shame-honor-based culture. One anthropologist wrote about the Middle East saying, quote, "What pressures the Arab to behave in an honorable manner is not guilt, but shame, or more precisely, the psychological drive to escape or prevent negative judgment by others." End quote. So in the Middle East, family honor is paramount. Whether one has actually broken the social code or not, if the people around you believe your actions are not right, your entire family suffers shame. Conversely, associating with the right people and following the social norms brings honor to the family. In fact, humility is not a virtue because a certain amount of bravado brings honor. Reaching for higher social status and claiming grand things about oneself that aren't true lift one up in the eyes of society. Whereas in our guilt-based culture, we would call that lying. In contrast, they see it as increasing one's honor. So family honor and avoidance of shame are what hold society together. And it's this concern with shame and honor which is a primary force at play in Jesus' advice at the dinner party. So in our gospel reading today, we hear Jesus is at a Sabbath supper with a Pharisee and his guests, where he gives two pieces of advice. First, he notices that everyone is trying to claim their share of the honor by sitting at the front of the table near the host. They are all exhibiting bravado. No one wants to sit at the shameful lower end. No one wants to be humble for fear of the shame it would bring. So Jesus at first appeals to their baser instincts and points out if they all sit at the head, some will inevitably be shamed because they'll be asked to move lower. He notes, in fact, that they will, in the long run, achieve greater honor if they start off being humble, sit too low, and are asked to move up. This notion of humility is a strange one to the Pharisee and his guests. It probably doesn't mesh well with their understanding of bringing honor to their families and themselves. But if they thought that was odd, wait till they hear what Jesus has to say next. Because in this culture, who you associate with is also a sign of honor and shame. And one always strives to associate with only the highest quality people. Remember how people gossip that Jesus ate with sinners? So imagine how radical it is when Jesus suggests that you should not invite people of high status to your home, but the lowest outcasts you can find, the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, the very people who cannot return the favor, the very people who cannot invite you to their luxurious homes where your honor will be increased. Jesus is turning the entire culture on its head, suggesting that one should embrace those shameful people. He's saying the reign of God is a place where shame and honor do not matter. What other people think doesn't matter. Your honor comes from sharing with those who are less fortunate, an honor you will fully receive later. In the meantime, in the immediate future, doing God's will may bring you great shame. But we are to be radically inclusive to all people, even if it goes against the grain of what others think. Now, before we get all smug and think to ourselves, wow, how great we are that we don't live in a shame-honor culture, let's just remember that shame does play an enormous part in our society. We are tremendously influenced by what others think of us. Think of how many trans or gay young people have been rejected by their families for the shame of it. Or how many of us feel our honor is increased if we own an expensive car or home. How many of us feel pressure to keep up with the Joneses? If we don't, we feel shame. The shame of not doing what we think other people expect of us has a powerful grip on our culture as well. Guilt, as a guiding principle, isn't all it's cracked up to be either. If our actions are guided only by our inner compasses, our own sense of morality, what happens when those compasses are broken? So Jesus comes with a new guide. We should not be governed by shame, nor should our actions arise out of guilt. Instead, our guiding principle should be love, expressed through humility and compassion. The letter to the Hebrews gets into this in more detail. It underscores the importance of love as a measure for one's actions, including hospitality to the stranger, remembering those in prison, fidelity in marriage, not to love money, and always praise God. We all want to be honored. We want people to like us. But sometimes, to live the kingdom life means doing something society will find shameful. It might mean loving the wrong people. The stranger and foreigner, opioid dealers, corrupt politicians, the physically or mentally disabled, Muslims and illegal immigrants. This might cause us to be rejected. Because frankly, following Jesus is not designed to bring us honor. In fact, it may cause shame. Jesus himself willingly embraced the shame of the cross. Because true reputation and honor are for God, not from self and not from society. We need not worry or be governed by shame or guilt, but by the love of God for us, practicing radical hospitality,